Hey folks, welcome back to Garza, Gaitan, and the game. And what a week it's been in the game of politics. We're here with Daniel Garza and myself, ready to go through it play by play. So much going on. Daniel, how's it going? How are you doing?
Enjoying my time. Enjoying my time.
I love it. Love to hear it. All
Yeah.
right, let's dive right into it. It's been quite a week. We're going to be covering a little bit of what's been going on between the Trump administration and Harvard. A lot of news coming out in that space, a lot of questions, a lot of support, a lot of people who are concerned. There's also news coming out of Washington, D.C. that Elon Musk will be not stepping down, but stepping out because of his 130 days as a special employee. Special employees, government employees, can only be there for about 130 days.
Oh,
He's coming to the end of that tenure. We're going to be looking at what were his main highlights during his time in the game and what a post Elon world looks like at DOGE and what's the role of Elon moving forward in that space. But let's kick it off with the topic of Harvard. All right, very interesting. Harvard, for the longest time, has been known as probably one of the best universities in the world, possibly, and for sure one of the top universities in the United States. Famously, I think a majority of the presidents who went to an Ivy League school, those majorities came out of Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. Same thing with Supreme Court justices. Same thing with famous individuals like Mark Zuckerberg, who didn't finish at Harvard but did attend. It's been a university that just I think throughout its history has had many highlights, but is right now at the center point of what some call a controversy and what others call something that for a long time should have been tackled, not just by President Donald Trump, but by previous administrations. Daniel, right now, the news coming out of DC is that Donald Trump is steps away from taking away the funding that the government, which means your tax dollars, goes towards Harvard. What is your reaction?
you failed to mention that your boy there, Ron DeSantis, also graduated out of Harvard, by the way.
Florida, governor of Florida, man. I'll put the governor of Florida against any of those other
There you
left-leaning
go.
Democrats any day.
No, listen, I'm okay with, I think, some of the actions that are being brought down on Harvard, only so that Harvard can reflect on the trajectory that it's been on several items, and I'll get to those really quick here. But I do like also the national attention and the eyes of the world focused on Harvard and Harvard's transgressions. Now, it's going to play the victim, of course, but even the students will tell you that there's been plenty to criticize Harvard about, and it's time that they reset. And look, before I get into it, let me preface it by saying that Obama had used a playbook of leveraging the federal government's resources against Harvard in the past, but his intent was to impose DEI not only on Harvard, but universities across the country. And he would, of course, obligate them to do so. Otherwise, he would pull federal funding. He also went hard after Bob Jones University, famously, on a lot of other issues that he wanted to sort of crack down on Bob Jones. Whether you agreed with him or not, that was the playbook. Trump took that playbook and is now using it. Now, you can say, well, yeah, but he's doing it at a whole different level. He's being much more aggressive. It's across the board, when it comes to the kind of federal funding. I had no idea how much money the federal government was actually investing and giving to universities like Harvard. 6 billion or 3 billion in student grants. That's massive. When you're talking about 100 million in just government contracts from federal departments, I'm not even talking about the other millions and millions that were already assigned in research grants and every other kind of concession that they've given to these universities. So, of course, now they're crying about it because Trump is moving fast on this stuff. But Trump is doing it because they've given them 2 years now, to do something about the anti-Semitism that is being experienced by their Jewish students, the hostility, the aggression, these antagonists, these rabble rousers and protesters, who with anti-American ideas, with pro-terrorist ties or sympathies, even are imposing their will, sometimes through violence, property damage, and intimidation. And they cross their arms and sit quietly by, these Harvard administrators, or do very little, to try to restrain this kind of activity that is harassment. Basically, this isn't free speech. This goes beyond that, and they've induced, I think, also or emboldened, these groups, these individuals, to play this aggressive role against Jewish students. That needs to stop. And so if they need to restrict subsidies to federal subsidies to the university, then let's do it. I mean, they're also silencing students themselves. Wadi, let's remember that FIRE, which is a free speech, respected free speech rights organization, qualified Harvard in last place of all the universities that they studied across the country when it comes to freedom of speech on their campus. Last place, Wadi. These people who are now, ironically, accusing the federal government of infringing upon their First Amendment are the prime violators of the First Amendment when it comes to their student body. And so this is, again, Trump saying this needs to stop. And if I need to intervene, I'm going to do so. They also openly discriminate, Wadi, in acceptance practices. If you are a white Christian male or an Asian, you are judged by one, criteria, than if you're a minority, a female, or of another religion in Harvard. The DEI now openly discriminates. It's gotten to the point where the Supreme Court had to step in and make them change their ways, but they found ways around that through nuancing, their language and their practices, and they're still violating, the rights of individuals solely based on immutable characteristics of an individual. It is un-American that if you have a 4.0 and you're white and male, you can't compete with somebody who is a minority at 2.5 GPA. That should not be allowed, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. That is outright discrimination. It shouldn't be allowed in our country. And the last thing I'll say, to this point, because you might have follow-up questions, is they have been ideologically captured. It's a leftist illiberalism that dominates Harvard. They did a study of, the professors, whether they were center left, or right, or whatever. 3% self-identified themselves as either conservative or Republican or some sort of non-liberal, non-leftist, Democrat. 3% across the entire campus. That isn't by accident. That is done deliberately. Now, they'll argue that, whoa, we just happen to be a liberal university with liberal leanings. No, that is leftism. That's leftism. That's partisan. You can be a Republican and be liberal. Liberal means, of course, being free of thought, free of speech, free of religion, free of consciousness and critical thinking. Liberal colleges does not necessarily mean leftism or progressivism and wokeism, and that's exactly what they're preaching. And so they're abusive about it. They're discriminatory about it, where they push out conservative professors. They will intimidate and harass conservative students and their ideas and their viewpoints because they don't align, with the university. And so, lastly, they failed to comply with the federal government in requesting information on foreign students. Shut it down.
Yeah, you answered my second question with your last point, so I'll just emphasize it. I was going to ask you, how did we get to this place, right? How do we get to this place where universities, the place where it's supposed to be somewhat of the town hall, the town square of our society, right? Where ideas are supposed to be debated, where one side can come up with a diagnosis or can come up with a conclusion. The other side can come up with the opposite thing. But I believe that probably just decades ago, there was this notion that the universities, it was almost honorable to do that. It was almost honorable to disagree, to have a battle of ideas. And it seems now that at a place where now Harvard and a lot of these universities have gone in the complete opposite direction. Prior to starting to record it, we were talking about how Ben Shapiro, famously at DePaul University, was not allowed to have his event, was not allowed to speak. Completely not. There have been other examples of, like Berkeley, for example, where they had to either reduce the attendance or where they had to have a large amount of security. But at DePaul, it was completely shut down. There's other examples of other
Riley
universities.
Gaines or Charlie Kirk, these types of characters on the center right, you're right, are censored, are kept out of universities, or some excuse to not have them, come in and share their ideas and have an interactive debate with the students on campus. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, and what I find interesting is these universities seemed, when it comes to these individuals who are conservative, that they did not have a concern for freedom of speech then. But then for individuals who I think we could agree are not actually practicing freedom of speech, are going beyond that, where they're taking actions where they're violating the rights of others, which at that point it no longer makes it free speech when you're putting in danger other individuals. That's when these universities step in and have concerns where people's freedom of speech is being, not upheld. So I want to ask you this. The question that many people have in this debate is maybe they're understanding a little bit of the freedom of speech aspect, but then their question is, do we have to then suffer on the funding part when it comes to research, when it comes to medicinal research, when it comes to innovation? That's a concern that polling shows that a lot of people are asking, what about that space? Is that a sacrifice that is being calculated? What's your opinion to those concerns?
Yeah, I think we got here because of the arrogance of the administrators. Arrogance, period. It's the wanting to impose your will, your way, your ideology, your way, your worldview on students, and it's starting to damage and hurt, infringe on the rights of the students, on the free expressions and free ideas and thought of the students themselves. They are the victims. I don't care about the federal government. I don't care, if they feel offended or whatever. It's the students that are not free to entertain other ideas, to express, to interact, to have conversations or dialogue around, leftist, center, and right ideas. That are still within the scope of, one could qualify as pro-American or within, the framework of American principles. If you start to, of course, wanting to introduce communist or socialist ideas, you should be, I think, rejected outright, by superior ideas. But let's have those discussions. Let's open them up now. Do we then, because of what the federal government is doing and trying to make Harvard comply with, with the individual rights of students, hurt, right? Science and the progress of research and these things? Look, Wadi, the one thing I'll say about what's going on at Harvard is that even scientific research is being colored, tainted. And the fruit of the poisonous tree that I'm talking about is, for example, just this week, a tenured professor was demoted, or was, her tenure was taken away, and she was given these consequences because she was found out to be manipulating scientific data, and introducing her own facts, her own lies, basically, into a study that was being done on ethics. On honesty, like she was being dishonest about, a research paper on honesty, and she lost her tenure
The
over it.
hypocrisy
So
there, right? I mean,
there's a hypocrisy
but
over it,
laugh at
right?
that.
And here's the problem too. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's happening, right? There's consequences and that are being meted out finally by a university that is onto this game. Pharmaceuticals, people who make scientific products and tools and whatever, are paying some of these researchers to arrive at a preconceived conclusion. There is an agenda, that is a paid for agenda, and that is manipulating the data on science. Um, it's happening across the board. It's not just universities; it's everywhere else. So even science now is being tainted. Even science is being bought for, and we may be the victims of that. We need oversight on some of this stuff. Universities cannot, through their sheer arrogance, operate alone in a vacuum. They don't get to dictate the rules. Look, Harvard can do whatever the hell they want, but do it without our money. Do it without government subsidies then. But if you are going to opt to take our money, government subsidies, then you're going to do it under our conditions. And our
Yeah,
conditions say that you will not discriminate, that you will not allow for an environment where Jewish students are harassed, intimidated, or their rights are violated. Where you are not going to be abusive to conservative students, conservative professors, or discriminate against them. And so that's the thing, right? It's like when you start taking federal money, it comes with conditions,
mhm.
and you have to comply with them. So what happens when they don't comply with them? Allow them to just continue violating, these conditions or these rules? No. Sometimes you do have to crack down on them and get them to comply. And if that means that sometimes, research money has to be withheld, then so be it.
Yeah, very much so. I think Harvard is going to have to learn this lesson because they're not only facing this through the administration, there have been private funders, alumni, very wealthy, well known alumni who also have stepped out. I think there was a letter
Yes.
of 150 folks who worked in venture capital, CEOs of company who graduated from Harvard, who sent a letter just saying that this is not what they
Stop
gave
this.
to their endowment for. This is
Right.
not why they donated to Harvard. So I think Harvard is really facing a tough situation at the moment. Something the Trump administration said is that they are considering taking these funds and putting them into trade schools. That's
I like
another
that.
conversation that we has kind of sparked here and there in our nation. But the reality is that a sort of 4 year academic career for some individuals is not the path that they desire, that they wish.
Right.
There are folks who want to work as mechanics, who want to have their own business as a electrician or in engineering in a track that doesn't necessarily require a 4 year degree. These trade schools, this is before my time, which means probably your time, Daniel. But there used to be more
Ouch.
trade programs in high schools. And
Yes.
since high schools don't really have that, the administration has talked about pouring some of these funding into these sort of institutions. Do you see this as a good step forward? Is this a sort of a good way to say, hey, we're not giving it to these schools, but we're going to be empowering these others?
I think it's brilliant by Trump to say that, look, I'm not doing it so I can keep the money. I'm going to shift the money over to where we can create real value in society, right? As opposed to, a university that's going to, abuse the conditions over and over again. Well, let's give it to these folks. Now, I would rather, that we'd have this kind of funding already for I think what is a very valuable element of universities, and should be cultivated and nurtured more. But hey, if the money is not going to be appreciated by Harvard, then let's send it to somebody who's going to appreciate it much more, and it's going to create, again, massive value for our societies. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, very much agreed. Well, Danny, I do want to turn over to another part of the conversation, another part of the game that we saw this week, and it's Elon Musk. Elon Musk famously came into the picture of politics probably a year or so ago when he came out. Let's remember, he was a Democrat. He was someone for so many years who
Right.
donated to the Democratic Party, who was unapologetic about supporting Democrat candidates, but over a year ago came out and just started sharing his frustrations with the Democrat policies. Famously also left the state of California to Texas, moved the headquarters and a lot of the work that they did from California into Texas, citing that a lot of these conservative policies that came out of states like Texas, like Florida, where they also do a lot of work with SpaceX, were just more welcoming to entrepreneurs, more welcoming even to
Yeah.
a family environment. When he talks about some of the reasons with sort of these woke policies that were sneaking, I would even say sneaking, that were front and center in California. This led him to support what he thought was a very important election Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, then Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. He then took on the famous role of DOGE. For many, some saw it as a controversial role, but he came in, Elon saying there's a mandate over the Trump administration, and it's getting rid of the waste, getting rid of inefficiencies in the government. As his time comes to a close there at DOGE, what do you see as the highlights? What do you see as the legacy that he will leave in those 130 days as a special government employee?
Yeah, Why when we talk about the game, I think Elon Musk changed the game, changed the conversation within the game, put the focus back on, the waste, fraud, and abuse that was happening with the spending of taxpayer dollars, in ways that I don't even think like a Rand Paul or anybody else has done. Because he took a hatchet, to a lot of these abuses that were occurring. I mean, look, the waste was, of course, that they were. I had no idea that we were pushing DEI on the third world through these grants and these NGOs, right, as a condition. The LGBTQ agenda was being imposed on third world governments. If you want our money, you have to impose, this kind of agenda. Can you not do that? I mean, irrespective of how you feel about, the LGBTQ or DEI agenda, why are we shoving, these kind of things into the throats of other people, from a different world? They have sovereignty. They can pick and choose whatever, now we can prompt them on democracy and American principles, but good God, man. I mean, it's like we're spending billions of dollars to impose an agenda that nobody asked for. And then the fraud, of course, to fake security accounts, billions of dollars that are being spent on this, on Medicare or Medicaid fraud, fake unemployment accounts, millions that were, being stolen from taxpayers in these areas. They exposed all this. The abuse that was happening in subsidizing leftist media like Politico and Axios and PBS, billions of dollars that were being paid in exorbitant amounts of dollars for subscriptions. It was like it was more like paying these platforms to promote their leftist agenda. Everybody knows what the money was for. They just called it something else, in these expenditures. It was just crazy. Billions of dollars going to subsidize media by the federal government through USAID. And look, anyone, by the way, anyone can view the massive list of waste and abusive spending that DOGE uncovered on DOGE Twitter. Just visit it right now and just start scrolling down, and you'll see all of the massive amounts of dollars that were spent on waste, on fraud, just one nauseating item after another. That's going to make your blood boil, to be honest with you. So I think in another twist to this whole thing, and it's not surreal because it's not like I didn't expect it. But it was really a sickening display of partisan scoundrels guarding their little honeypot. Democrats attacked the people, DOGE employees, for exposing the waste, fraud, and abuse. They went after their throats, because again, if you scroll down this list on Twitter, you will be shocked and dismayed, and yet that's exactly what the Democrats were defending, because, of course, it was funding a lot of their agenda, but it was also laundering money, to subsidize a lot of the elections on the left side and their narratives. So, all to say, Wadi, that while Elon and DOGE didn't deliver on the $1 trillion that they said that they were going to cut, it did bring a ton of attention to the malfeasance. The original mission of DOGE was to downsize government, right, and eliminate wasteful spending, and that now is front and center, I think, for a lot of Americans. Again, Congress now, I think, needs to take up the mantle and get to it. Hopefully, maybe they can have these what they call rescission cuts on the big beautiful bill.
That's going to be a very important part. Obviously, not just for the legacy of Elon, but really for the direction of the country. Because a lot of what Elon did, my understanding is, can be reversed if the new administration is a Democrat administration and they feel that they want to bring all these employees back. They want to bring back all this spending. There's a lot that I think they wouldn't bring back. Elon shared in several interviews some of the very basic things that when they walked in, they said, how can we email all of the employees, right? They went to the Office of Personnel Management. They said we just want to email everyone, and they
Yeah.
said we don't have that. Everything's segmented. There's no way to really communicate. Everything is siloed. He said, well, let's create a system where we can communicate. How are we
The
not
game. Yep.
communicating? The basic things of when an employee has to be let go or even wants to retire, the
Yes.
amount of days or even weeks, if I'm not mistaken, in the process that it has to take. They talked about in sort of the cave
Inefficient and
in
unnecessary.
Pennsylvania. So there's a lot of inefficiencies
Yeah.
that they also talked. There was a lot of waste, but inefficiencies that they tackled. So I don't think Elon's going anywhere. There have been reports that he's going to sort of let go of the gas pedal when it comes to his involvement in politics moving forward. I think that it's a little bit of truth, but I think he still has an investment when it comes to Congress moving forward with a lot of these policies. I think it's a topic that he's passionate about and will continue to see. And of course, like you said, Congress needs to take this up on their own, codified. It can't be something that it could just swing from administration to administration. Very interesting topic. Again, I don't think it's the last we'll see of Elon Musk. But Daniel, that concludes our main topics for this week for the game of politics when it comes to everything that's going on in Harvard, a topic that's not going away. Same thing with Elon Musk. We encourage everybody who's tuning in to Garza Gaitan and the game. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. We're on TikTok. We're also on Instagram. Check us out there for our reels. Check out YouTube for the entire episode. But we'll make sure to catch you guys next time here for our next episode.